I now invite the Assembly to view a video message from His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the 76th session of the General Assembly.
Excellencies, colleagues, friends, I'm honored to join you all in commemorating the 50th anniversary of the United Nations Environment Programme. I take this opportunity to extend my congratulations to Unep on its milestone 50th anniversary, and to express my confidence that Unep will continue to build on its successes in the years ahead. Over the last 50 years, Unep has coordinated a worldwide effort to confront the planet's biggest environmental challenges. The organization has played a key role in creating dozens of institutions and agreements that have advanced understanding of global challenges and propelled international action. These include game changers such as the 1987 Montreal Protocol, which led to a 98% drop in controlled ozone-depleting gases. The International Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which since 1988 has been the leading global body on climate science. The 1992 Earth Summit and its associated global treaties on climate and biodiversity. The 2005 Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, the first ever survey of the health of the world's biological resources. The phasing out of leaded fuel last July after a relentless 19-year campaign. Helping prevent many endangered species from going extinct, and many, many more. Unep has helped to lay the foundations for a scientific consensus on environmental decline, and it should be proud of the body of law that has been enacted globally. Unep's convening power and rigorous scientific research has provided a platform for countries to engage, act boldly, and advance the global environmental agenda. Likewise, I also acknowledge and applaud the government of Kenya for its role in hosting the Secretariat of Unep for the past 50 years and for supporting its many initiatives in environmental conservation. Excellencies, dear friends, today as we commemorate Unep's efforts and achievements, we must reflect on whether we as a global community are doing enough to support those efforts and to meet our obligations to the planet. Now, at this very critical time, as the world recovers from a pandemic and is confronted with the realities of war, climate change, and environmental degradation, we must step up to the task. We must redouble our commitments and stay on track to meet the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We must take action to preserve our planet, its environments, and our collective well-being. During this high-level meeting, I look forward to Member States' adoption of the political declaration on strengthening international environmental law and environmental governance. And I very much look forward to the outcome that will derive from the 5th session of the UN Environment Assembly. My friends, I come from the Maldives, a small island state heavily reliant on our ecosystems for our sustenance and economy. I know the human costs that will accompany environmental degradation and climate change. That is why I made protecting the planet one of the key priorities of my Presidency of Hope, and why I will continue to support environmental champions such as Unep in their important work. In 3 months, we will mark 50 years since the historic conference held in Stockholm in 1972, which led to the creation of Unep. The Stockholm Declaration provided the first agreed set of principles for work in the field of human environment. It was a considerable contribution to the development of international environmental law. Its legacy continues. Recognizing this, I will convene a preparatory meeting for this international meeting in 3 weeks at the United Nations in New York. Stockholm will serve as a space for reflection on the dependencies between humanity and the environment, and on our responsibility for the well-being of both. Both commemorations provide opportunities to build lasting coalitions for the environment and will foster stronger partnerships for and with future generations. This is something I truly champion. To build the future we want, we need to listen to the voices of future generations. In recognition of these important commemorations, and given that the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly coincides with high-level meetings on biodiversity, desertification, the ocean, energy, and climate, I will convene a high-level thematic debate in July entitled "A Moment for Nature." There we will reflect on solutions to common bottlenecks across the environmental agenda to accelerate progress on all fronts. I will also convene a high-level meeting in May focused on the sustainable and resilient recovery of the tourism sector, where I will emphasize the need for the world to transition to blue and green economic practices. I believe we can achieve prosperity for all without compromising our natural blessings, and while taking action to protect climate-vulnerable communities residing in small island developing states. Dear colleagues, rest assured that throughout the session and going forward, I will always support efforts to preserve the health of our planet. Though the challenges are many, and the pandemic has made our task of meeting those challenges ever more difficult, I believe that through multilateralism and concerted effort, we will prevail. With that conviction, let us act now to preserve the earth and its rich environmental heritage for generations to come. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, for your statement. It is now my pleasure to invite the Assembly to view a video message from His Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Excellencies, colleagues, dear friends, it gives me great pleasure to greet this landmark special session. When the United Nations Environment Programme was founded in 1972, the planet was already showing signs of buckling under the weight of humanity. Unep offered the world a new way forward based on a vision for a better, healthier Earth built on the pillars of international cooperation. In the following decades, Unep and its partners would work with member states to combat air pollution, restore the ozone layer, protect the world's seas, promote a green and inclusive economy, and raise the alarm about biodiversity loss and climate change. It has shown that multilateralism works and can deliver solutions for people and the planet. UNEP's science, policy work, coordination and advocacy has helped to right environmental wrongs around the world and raise awareness of the critical importance of the environmental dimension of sustainable development. The work you do has never been more important. Humanity continues to wage a suicidal war against nature. Climate disruption, biodiversity and habitat loss, and pollution and waste threaten our societies and much of life on Earth. We know what needs to be done. First, we must protect the most vulnerable, who now number in the billions. We need scaled-up international cooperation to provide the financial and technical assistance that vulnerable countries and communities need for greater resilience. Donors and multilateral development banks should more than double the share for climate adaptation to at least 50% of climate finance by 2024. Second, the world must cut global emissions by 45% this decade to reach net zero emissions by 2050. This means no new coal and no coal finance. I was encouraged in Glasgow by the announcement of a renewable energy partnership with South Africa. We need equivalent coalitions for all countries that have pledged to get out of coal and that need technological and financial support. Coal needs to be phased out in OECD countries by 2030 and by 2040 everywhere else. And every sector in every country needs to decarbonize this decade, especially the energy and transportation sectors. Third, we must halt the extinction crisis. And that means having an ambitious and actionable post-2020 biodiversity framework to put us on a path of living in harmony with nature. And fourth and finally, we must drastically reduce chemical, plastic and solid waste pollution. That means tackling the drivers of environmental degradation, especially poverty and unsustainable consumption and production. I'm encouraged by the moves by the UN Environment Assembly to establish an intergovernmental committee to negotiate a legally binding global agreement on plastic pollution. We must also transform our financial and accounting systems so they reflect the true cost of economic activities, including their impact on nature and the environment. In all we do, we need to follow science and engage in multilateral action to make peace with nature. Unep supports that science and facilitates multilateral action and partnership. I thank Kenya for hosting Unep's headquarters over the last 50 years, making Nairobi the global hub for the environment. On this anniversary, let us reflect on the urgent tasks ahead. We are nearing a point of no return, and let our successes, such as the Montreal Protocol, give us inspiration for the huge efforts that are needed now to ensure these and future generations can live on a sustainable planet. Unep, along with the entire United Nations system, will be central to those efforts. As we look ahead, let us grasp the opportunities of working together under an active, open and networked multilateralism. All countries have a crucial role to play in protecting people and the planet. I wish you a fruitful special session of the Environment Assembly, and I wish you every success in the important work to come. Thank you.
Thanks to His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres for his wise words. Next, I'm honored to invite His Excellency Mr. Colin Vixen Kelapile, President of the Economic and Social Council, to deliver his statement.
Your Excellency, Ms. Leila Ben Ali, President of the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly and Minister of Energy, Transition and Sustainable Development of the Kingdom of Morocco, Your Excellency, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency, Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency, Dr. Mukwezi Eric Gavetri Masisi, my own State President of the Republic of Botswana, Your Excellency, Mr. Felix Molola, Prime Minister of the Central African Republic, Honorable Ministers, Executive Director of Unep, Inga Anderson, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and heads of the UN system and other international organizations, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me express my sincere appreciation to the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, Unep, for inviting me and actually kindly facilitating my in-person participation in this 50th anniversary commemoration. I join the previous speakers in commending UNEP for effectively implementing its mandate as the focal agency for environmental issues in the UN system. This includes monitoring the state of the environment, informing policymaking, and coordinating responses to the world's environmental challenges. On many occasions, UNEP has brought more attention to environmental problems that were previously given inadequate attention. It was the proactive work of UNEP and its partners in 1989 that alerted the world about the devastating impact of climate change. Only had we listened and acted in a timely manner. Among many other commendable achievements is UNEP's dedicated focus on environmental education at all levels, the advocacy for protection of the seas and wetlands, and the contribution to environmental multilateralism through supporting the formulation of international agreements. Furthermore, I am impressed by the support that Unep has already provided and continues to provide, especially to developing countries in the field of green technology, particularly solar energy and electric mobility. Excellencies, I should note that as we celebrate UNEP's achievements of the past 50 years, this commemoration is also an opportunity for governments and all stakeholders to reaffirm their commitment to work even more closely and collaboratively with Unep, going into what is already a very uncertain future. Now more than ever before, Unep will need our strong support as it relentlessly leads urgent efforts to address the triple planetary crisis in the form of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. As President of ECOSOC, I am determined to rally the Council's membership to support UNEP and inspire its work in coordination with the entire UN system. As the UN principal organ dedicated to development matters, ECOSOC greatly values the important input UNEP provides to the work of the Council in championing the environmental dimension of sustainable development. This is primarily due to the fact that, despite being indiscriminate, climate change and environmental challenges mostly impact vulnerable groups in our societies, including the poor, indigenous peoples, small landholders, coastal communities, women and girls, as well as countries in special situations, such as the small island developing states, the least developed countries, the landlocked developing countries. Excellencies, part of building back better and recovering from COVID-19 pandemic should therefore include simultaneously addressing the triple planetary crisis. This demands working very closely with the UNEP to inform climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution mitigation and adaptation policy measures. In this regard, we at ECOSOC look forward to convening the member states and other stakeholders for the high-level political forum on sustainable development, the HLPF, which will be held in July, where SDG 14 on life below water and SDG 15 on life on land will be among the goals to be reviewed in depth. I therefore count on UNEP, the member states and other partners to ensure that the HLPF also benefits from discussions and outcomes of this very meeting, as well as the resumed session of the UN Environment Assembly. I also invite the member states to engage with our Council and actively participate at ECOSOC's various activities that are aimed at preparing for the HLPF. We must ensure that deliberations at the upcoming ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development follow-up, the Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Science, Technology and Innovation for Sustainable Development Goals, and the HLPF itself reflect the interconnectedness of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement, as well as all other multilateral environmental agreements. Excellencies, in conclusion, let me reaffirm that as President of ECOSOC, I am committed to contribute in strengthening multilateralism, international cooperation, and solidarity in a way that amplifies the voices of the most vulnerable countries and engaging all stakeholders to increase the ambition for sustainable development and climate action to ensure that no one is left behind. But sadly, we are meeting at a time when our global peace is facing serious threats beyond the already severe setbacks occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot afford any further destruction from focusing on achieving the 2030 agenda and in this decade of action. We all understand that peace and development are interlinked, and none can be advanced without the other. It is therefore my hope that global peace shall be maintained in order to create the necessary conditions for ECOSOC and the UN system, including Unep, to meaningfully contribute to an SDG-led recovery from the COVID-19 and thus achieve the longer-term socio-economic progress and sustainable development envisioned in the UN Charter. I thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency Kelapile, for setting such a clear roadmap. I now welcome Mrs. Inger Anderson, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, to deliver her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Makwetsi Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana, Your Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency Felix Molua, Prime Minister of the Central African Republic, and Your Excellency Leila Ben Ali, President of the 6th United Nations Environment Assembly, and Your Excellency Colin Vixen Kelapile, President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Colleagues and friends, distinguished guests, friends who have worked with us for so long, allow me to begin to thank Her Excellency Ambassador Selma Haddadi of Algeria and everyone else who worked so hard to organize this commemoration of Unep at 50. Friends, Unep and the environmental movement has traveled far since its birth in 1972 Stockholm Conference. Our journey has sometimes been difficult, but it has always been guided by vision, by science, by the certainty that a healthy environment benefits everyone, everywhere. This journey has carried the environment from the fringes to the mainstream, set the crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste buzzing on everyone's lips, led humanity to understand that we must transform our societies and economies to protect the earth, our only home, so that it can sustain us. Friends, today we are standing on the shoulders of the Stockholm giants. Maurice Strong, who led the conference and became UNEP's first executive director. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, whose speech linked environmental conservation and poverty reduction, one of the key principles of the Sustainable Development Goals. Prime Minister Olof Palme, whose call for concerted international actions resonates even today. President Jomo Kenyatta, who gave UNEP its home, the first United Nations headquarters in the Global South, where we stand today with his son, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Their memories live on in us. Their deeds live on with us, because these pioneers and others like them made everything we do possible. So let us remember how they put the environment on the socio-economic map. Back then, carving out the relevance of, yes, a little-known subject was not easy. People sent telegraphs, not emails. They took flights to advocate for change instead of placing video calls. There were no universities from which you could graduate with a degree in environmental studies. Yet, these pioneers succeeded and how. They laid the foundations of the awareness that we see today. They wove the tapestry of multilateral environmental agreements that hold us to account on everything from protecting species to slowing global warming. The obvious example is the Montreal Protocol. Yes, you've heard this one before, but don't stop me there. Instead, pause to reflect on that achievement. The world united to repair a hole in the sky, not a hole in a sock, not a hole in the road, not a hole in the budget, a gaping hole in the sky, the blue vastness above us. Yet humanity and human technology had carved out this hole, but we didn't double down and continue enlarging the hole. We doubled back. We fixed the error. We saved millions of lives and protected nature. We showed that environmental multilateralism does deliver. That is a lesson that should inspire us today. Friends, there have been other major achievements: the launch of the scientific body, the IPCC, the phase out of lead in petrol, and just yesterday, the resolution starting the pathway to a global plastic pollution deal to end plastic pollution for good. But let's zoom out and see the overarching success. Today, Unep is now at the heart of protecting the asset upon which we all rely, the environment. The world has realized that it cannot pollute its way to development and clean up later. We have a human right to a healthy environment. Youth are demanding change. Governments, cities, and regions are acting. Businesses are acting. Investors are acting. None of this was in place 50 years ago. However, our journey will only conclude when we ensure that humanity as a whole can thrive without skewing the delicate balance of life on this glorious planet. The IPCC told us earlier this week that global warming and climate change have caused climate injustice and dangerous disruption to the natural world. Nature and biodiversity loss are undermining the sustainable development goals. Pollution and waste are killing millions of people each year. Now we must quicken our steps before that triple planetary crisis leaves us stumbling to catch through its growing wake of destruction. The global community must move from science to policy to real, meaningful action. Our to-do list is long. Ensure economic decisions account for global public goods, that is nature. Reshape our energy, transport, and food systems around decarbonization and circularity. Transform economic and financial models so that capital backs the planet and people as well as profitability. Invigorate multilateralism through the common agenda. As the global organization through which the nations can safely safeguard this planet, Unep will throw everything that it has at these transformations: its science, its innovation, its commitment, its experience, and its heart. But Unep and the environmental movement cannot do this alone. We need everyone with us, and not just the true believers. And yes, some of us must do more than others. This is how we deliver justice for those who bear the least responsibility for the triple planetary crisis, but suffer the most. We must change and deliver on a stable climate, on a rich and bountiful nature, and on a solution-free world. Because when we do so, we deliver on the SDGs. Friends, I know that many people see storm clouds thickening overhead and despair at being lost forever in the darkness. I understand. But I see a glistening golden thread of environmental action that our forebears wove for us in 1972. A thread that Unep and the environmental community has thickened into a rope, a guide rope strong enough for us all to grasp, a thread that is woven in multilateralism. We must now hold on to this rope and follow it into blue skies, azure seas, and verdant nature, thrumming with life in all its forms, into peace and prosperity and equity, into a world where humanity, as part of nature, lives as part of nature and not above it. We owe this to the past, to our present, and most certainly to the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anderson, for your inspiring statement, as usual. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank very deeply for the dedicated and relentless efforts the Secretariat, under the leadership of the Executive Director and the Acting Deputy Executive Director, Mrs. Sonia Layton-Kahn, in preparing for this special session of the Assembly and this commemoration. The Assembly has now concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 1. I now invite the Assembly to consider Agenda Item 4, statements by representatives. The Assembly will begin to hear statements delivered by heads of state and government. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Mogwitsi Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Director of Ceremonies, Your Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency President Muhammad Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency Prime Minister Felix Murua, the Prime Minister of CAR, Your Excellency the President of UNEA, Ms. Lina Minadi, Your Excellency Madam Inga Anderson, Executive Director of Unep, and President Colin Kelapile of ECOSOC, distinguished guests, and I can't help but notice the former Executive Director of Unep, now Executive Director of UNDP. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the Government of the Republic of Kenya for convening this special commemorative event and for inviting Botswana to be a part of the 50th anniversary celebrations of the United Nations Environmental Programme. Kenya continues to provide exemplary leadership in the fields of sustainable development, environmental management, and climate change. On behalf of the people and the government of Botswana, I therefore wish to applaud His Excellency President Kenyatta for his visionary leadership and stewardship. Not so long ago, the great tumults of COVID-19 that accompanied the commemorations of the 75th anniversary of the UN served as a spectre of a dull moment, itself a useful reminder of how the promises to bequeath a safer planet to succeeding generations could be so encumbered within the blink of an eye. My delegation, therefore, welcomes the opportunity provided by this commemoration to reflect on our interactions with Unep and on the future we want. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, Botswana applauds Unep, its past and current leadership, for the impact the organization has had on our environmental management agenda. The organization remains a global authority on environmental matters. To this end, we welcome this commemoration as a moment to reflect on past achievements and to ponder on current challenges in order to chart the way forward and strengthen this premier organization. This commemoration comes at a time when the world is faced with multifaceted challenges that continue to militate against the achievement of sustainable development and the protection of our planet. The stark reality is that the world is no longer what it was many years ago. The economic, environmental, and social challenges of the 21st century are varied and quite profound and have significantly altered the global sustainable development order. Economic activity and population growth, particularly in the developing countries, have compounded the already enormous strain placed on the world's natural resources and ecosystems. More specifically, the impacts of climate change, desertification, loss of biodiversity, and growing levels of poverty are a painful reality of our times. In view of these challenges, it is essential for us as global leaders to champion the balance between environment and development. To this end, Unep provides a strong platform in terms of decision-making, as well as an effective reference point, which we must support in whatever way possible. Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, there are significant achievements that Botswana has realized within the sphere of environmental management. Botswana has updated and enacted new legislation and policy instruments to respond to the ever-evolving environmental challenges. In order to contribute effectively to the global challenge to address climate change, we have strengthened and updated our national determined contributions and developed the climate change policy and the National Adaptation Plan. We pursued these policy developments in line with the National Transformation Agenda, where we are focused on transforming the general socio-economic and environmental status of Botswana. In keeping with our international obligations, Botswana has continued to ensure high standards in the sustainable management of biodiversity, rich ecosystems such as the Okavango Delta, now listed as a World Heritage Site, and the Makgadikgadi wetlands system. We also continue to ensure that the abundant wildlife resources are protected and utilized sustainably. I am particularly proud to state that 40% of Botswana's land is under protected area status. As Botswana, we also take pride in having integrated environmental management into our national development planning processes and in our National Vision 2036. These are two key development instruments that guide our development as a nation. Furthermore, a position has been taken to ensure that all national policy development processes integrate environmental management, as this is a cross-cutting issue. At the local level, Botswana has a community-based natural resource management program. This is meant to enhance community livelihoods through sustainable use of the natural resource base that exists in their environs. Among this is a sustainable use of wildlife resources to support community livelihoods. My government has also strengthened the National Environmental Fund, which is a funding mechanism that supports communities in implementing environment and development projects that can enhance livelihoods, build resilience, economic recovery, and sustainability. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, Botswana continues to walk in the path provided by multilateral environmental agreements that she is party to. However, with limited resources, fulfilling these commitments continues to remain a challenge, but we stand committed as Botswana. Do not doubt it. Before I conclude my remarks, I wish to appeal to the international community, green philanthropists, private sector, research institutions, and development agencies, among others, to prioritize incentivizing success in conservation. Nations that have succeeded in conservation, especially of critical global goods, such as red-listed species, should be supported and not punished for their success stories through stringent global regulatory measures that deter sustainable utilization and trade in wildlife resources, among others. Let me reaffirm Botswana's commitment to multilateralism and to the collective interests of the global community as espoused in the Sustainable Development Goals. Together as nations, through collaborations and partnerships, we can realize the future we aspire for, and Unep remains a valuable leader to connect us with this future. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency Masisi, for sharing your vision, commitments, and the achievements of the Republic of Botswana. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellencies President and Prime Minister here President, Your Excellency the Executive Director of Unep, Your Excellency President of UNEA 6, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to deliver these remarks as we gather during this official session to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations Environmental Programme under the theme Strengthening United Nations Environment Programme for the implementation of the environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda for Sustained Development. Your Excellencies, the United Nations Environment Programme 50 is a time to reflect on the past and envision the future. It provides the opportunity to bolster international cooperation and stimulate collective action to address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste. As we all know, no country or continent can address this global crisis alone. Each nation has a central role to play in protecting our people and planet. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 50 years ago, after United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm in June 1972, with the efforts of Ambassador Maurice Strong of Canada, many governments became convinced of the need to make climate and environment action a priority. And with Maurice Strong as United Nations Environment Programme's first executive director, the path was clear to what nations need to do, make our environment safer, healthier, and better. During last year's COP26 in Glasgow, parties worked towards spurring action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, while also pledging to take steps to adapting to climate impacts. Nations are constantly facing the threats of disrupted weather patterns, low food production, and rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding, among other challenges. In that regard, Nigeria pledged to work with other countries in achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, and in doing so has increased her conditional contribution to reduce greenhouse gas from 45% to 47%. Additionally, I outlined Nigeria's efforts and commitments towards transitioning to net zero ambition, which involve both environment and development-related plans. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of United Nations Environment Programme's existence, We laud the efforts of the United Nations Environment Programme and encourage broader action to outcome climate change, biodiversity, rising levels of pollution and waste being three major crises threatening our planet. Notably, desertification and drought are threatening lives and livelihoods, which further underscores the need to boost biodiversity in ecosystem restoration. We thank the United Nations Environment Programme for its role in reducing biodiversity loss and for being a major player in the global movement to slow deforestation, accelerate afforestation. We recognize that restoring key ecosystems is crucial to help combat climate change and achieve sustainable development. Therefore, by collaborating with partners such as the United Nations Environment Programme, we believe that much more success would be recorded as we journey in collective struggle against climate change. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to thank my dear brother, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, for his invitation and the very warm hospitality extended to our delegation. In the same way, I would like to thank the Ministers of Environment and their team for their commitment and active participation during the resumed fifth session of the United Nations General Assembly, which preceded the commemorative event. Similarly, I heartily congratulate the leadership of the United Nations Environment Programme as we commemorate and celebrate your successes and achievements in the last 50 years. I take this opportunity to urge redoubled collective efforts to improve and sustain climate action, nature action, chemical and pollution action, air, biosafety, disasters and conflicts, green economy, gender, oceans and seas, resource efficiency, water and youth education in order to save our planet and achieve the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you to President Buhari of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the compelling and comprehensive statement. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am now deeply honored to invite the host country to Unep, His Excellency Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces of the Republic of Kenya, to address the Environment Assembly. Thank you.
Your Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency Dr. Mugwetsi Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana, Your Excellency Felix Molua, Prime Minister of the Central African Republic, the President of UNEA and Minister of Energy and Environment, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellency Kalawili, President of ECOSOC, the Executive Director of the United Nations Environmental Programme, the Director General of the United Nations Office in Nairobi, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying that on behalf of the people of Kenya, we warmly welcome you to this event that commemorates today 50 years since the establishment of the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, in 1972. Today marks a proud moment as we celebrate the extraordinary environment journey that we all have walked together as a global community. The Stockholm Conference in 1972 led to the establishment of the United Nations Environmental Program and galvanized the formation of environment ministries and agencies around the world. Since then, through a series of protocols, such as the 1987 Montreal Protocol for limiting emissions of gases, conferences such as the Earth Summit in 1992, as well as through systematic scientific research, Unep has transformed into a formidable ecological consciousness for the world as it boldly championed the environment agenda. Progressively, over the last 50 years, Unep has led the world to understand the centrality of environment in human existence, to appreciate the increased threats to the environment, and also the existential threat that exists to our planet. They have also helped us galvanize collective global action to protect our environment. The journey has not been easy. It has required Unep to provide technical, diplomatic, as well as political leadership in the development of the core concept of sustainable development, and more importantly, to build ownership of these concepts at national level. As part of UNEP's core mission, it has required defining and enforcing rules and procedures for protecting the environment, such as limiting of emissions or stopping endangered species from becoming extinct. Through its scientifically driven agenda, Unep has established a credible platform for countries to come together and act boldly to advance the global environment agenda. I commend the leadership of the United Nations and the Unep family for successfully steering the environmental ship through troubled waters and remaining steadfast and focused in implementing your core mandate. At this point, I would like to congratulate UNEA 5 for a successful assembly which has witnessed the adoption of the End Plastic Pollution Resolution and several other resolutions culminating in a ministerial declaration. I know this was not easy, and for that reason, I want to commend and congratulate all member states for the dedication and diligence that you have shown towards prioritizing this real issue that affects our planet. I also want to congratulate the Executive Director, Ms. Inger Anderson, for the fruitful results of this assembly, and most importantly, recognize the implementing and coordinating role that this resolution has placed on you to ensure the modalities of the resolution are actioned and implemented by member states, and we assure you of our support in this endeavor. As we look forward, we must also look back. And I wish to recognize two individuals who championed the creation of an environmental organization and the hosting of UNEP here in Nairobi. They are the late Ambassador Joey Odera, who was Kenya's permanent representative to the UN and who played an instrumental role in ensuring that UNEP finds a home here in Nairobi. Equally worthy of recognition is the first UNEP Executive Director, the late Maurice Strong. Mr. Strong played a central leadership role in defining the character of the United Nations Environmental Program and in leading the Earth Summit, which is recognized as one of the most consequential UNEP conferences. Allow me also to recognize and appreciate all executive directors who followed Mr. Strong. Allow me also today to recognize the late Professor Wangari Maathai, who championed practical and locally grown solutions to fight environmental degradation. I also wish to thank all member states who contributed towards ensuring that Unep obtained the support it required to host the two events this week, UNEA 5 and Unep at 50. As we look forward towards the future of the United Nations Environmental Programme, we want, and I want to urge all stakeholders to enhance, mobilize, and prioritize support for this important organization. I urge all of us to support UNEP because it has, without doubt, demonstrated its critical role in ensuring a sustainable planet by tackling cross-cutting issues such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and plastic pollution. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot talk about development, peace, and security without highlighting its nexus with climate change. Unchecked climate change will pose unacceptable risks to our security, our economies, our SDGs, and indeed our planet. It is only through a united front by all member states against the triple planetary crisis, namely climate change, nature, and pollution, that the Sustainable Development Goals will be achieved. Let us therefore commit to support UNEP to steer the environmental discussions towards tangible and sustainable solutions. Kenya remains committed to environmental sustainability, and in this regard, we have firmly anchored the environment pillar in our economic blueprint that we term Kenya Vision 2030. We are proud to be the only UN headquarters in the Global South, an honor that we appreciate and protect. We have therefore worked closely with the UN to provide support and facilities to the UN agencies based in Kenya and in our region, so that they are able to achieve their mandate. Today, I am pleased to report that we will provide land for the development of humanitarian and logistic hubs in 3 locations in Kenya, namely Naivasha, Nairobi, and Mombasa. We have also further provided land for the creation of a diplomatic enclave adjacent to the United Nations office at the UN Nairobi complex. In addition, and in order to enhance efficiency in the administration of diplomatic privileges, we have developed an integrated protocol management information system that creates an automated one-stop shop for tax exemptions, staff registration, issuance of diplomatic ID cards, registration and transfer of motor vehicles, among other online services. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I want to conclude my remarks by saying how proud we are as a country to co-host this commemoration of UNEP at 50 here at its headquarters. I wish to once again reiterate Kenya's utmost support to the United Nations Environmental Programme and reaffirm our commitment towards ensuring that it continues to deliver on its critical mandate. I also call upon all member states to continue to ensure that their commitments and support to this organization, which are critical in safeguarding our planet, our prosperity, are also given a key priority. I also wish, ladies and gentlemen, to take this opportunity to invite you all to two key events that I believe will enable us to consolidate the commitments we make this week. That is the Stockholm +50, which Kenya is co-hosting with Sweden and will be held in Stockholm on the 2nd to the 3rd of June this year. This event will be a celebration of the 50 years of global environmental action, and more importantly, it will act as a springboard to accelerate the implementation of the UN Decade of Action to deliver the SDGs and to encourage the adoption of green post-COVID-19 recovery plans. Soon after Stockholm +50, Kenya will also co-host with Portugal the UN Oceans Conference in Lisbon on the 27th of June to the 1st of July 2022. This conference will seek to propel the much-needed science-based innovative solutions to sustainability in the management of our oceans. We look forward to seeing you all in Stockholm and Lisbon. As I conclude, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and in recognition and in order to celebrate the 50 years of Unep, the Kenyan government has decided to put forward the Amani and Mazingira Global Award that will be sponsored by the Kenyan government and the people of Kenya. This will be an award to persons or institutions who champion environmental sustainability and peace, and will be a biannual award. It will be accompanied by a monetary award of $20,000, and the first awardee will be announced on the 1st of June of this year, which is our Madaraka or Republic Day. With those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think the United Nations Environment Programme